Hello all, Alison here. Welcome back to Words and Pictures for some more tag time. I'm still basically completely obsessed with these watercolour stencil backgrounds we created the other day. And so I'm going to do something more with them today. Not with these four, which I just don't want to mess with at the moment. They may just stay like this forever. But I've taken the flipped ones. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I will link to the video down below. That we created these in, and I have cut them into tag shapes, quite long, elegant tag shapes, because they were quite long, elegant pieces of card. I used one of these Prima. This is from a Prima tag pad, which may or may not have been discontinued now. I forget. Lots of people asked me about it when we used it for some rose colouring in, which I'll also link to. They do still make similar ones. I don't know if they still make the same one. I literally cut round it and then stamped a hole through. They're a little bit shorter because one of them was just, I mean, it's millimetres. But yeah, so I cut round. I've got myself a trio of tags, which I'm quite excited. Given the beachy seashore colours, I'm quite excited to add some sort of reeds, grassy stamping, sort of sand dune type things. I've tried to pull out some Distress Ink and Distress Oxide colours that I think might tone quite well. I've also got some archivals that will both tone and contrast, and I have still got my watercolour palette sitting around in case I want to activate that and add some colour. I don't know exactly whether these colours are going to work, so what I've also got is a piece of the same watercolour paper just to one side, so that I can test a colour on it in advance and know what kind of colour I'm going to get, so that I don't get horrible shocks when the stamp lands there. I've got two of my all-time favourite PaperArtsy stamps that are not mine. These grasses that are by Lin Brown. This is probably one of my most used stamps of all time on ELB30. And then, yeah, a couple of my, I thought the cornflowers might come into play. I'm also quite interested in some of these textures, so I'm going to have a play. We'll see. And one reason I've pulled out quite a few oxides, which I fairly rarely stamp in oxide, you absolutely can, is because the watercolours have got this lovely chalky look. I thought it might be quite nice to use oxides over them. I'm going to start with this grass because I love it. I'm going to start with a background layer of it, I think. It's a very tall stamp, so I'm going to need one of my tallest grid blocks to get it on. And because I've used it so much and I haven't really cleaned the back, I'm going to press it down nice and firmly because I have a feeling it's going to jump off if I don't. Right, I might go with an old paper to start with, which is this beautiful sort of vintage off green, which gives you a look of old paper when you smoosh it and dab it and spritz it and so on and so forth. Let's have a look at it on here just to see that it's going to be a really subtle one, and I think that's what I'm after for background. You don't want anything too prominent in the background. You want to be able to move things forward. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some sort of joint stamping. So it's going to go half and half, get the job done in half the time. There we go. So we'll put that one there. Good little rock. Oh, I see I haven't got my mat out. There we go, silicone mat. Not that it matters. This is just leftover bits of flooring underneath. That's a beautiful, subtle beginning. Now, of course, I don't want those two living next to each other because that just looks odd. Let's do another one of those here. I might add in to that a bit of pumice stone. So this time I'm going to do my much loved thing of ink it up with the old paper. And then I might, maybe rather than pumice stone, let's go with a couple of dabs of iced spruce just moving through this. That's a slightly more strong grey blue, green blue. Let's go a little lower down and let's go slightly skew-if. I mean on the diagonal. Skew-if implies something wrong. It's a pejorative kind of a thing. Oh yes, subtle but lovely. Let's go with a full-on iced spruce. Actually, not a full-on iced spruce. Let's dab some old paper onto it in places. So I'm sort of tilting and angling that, so it's not going flat down. I'm just hitting individual little sprigs of grass with that. I think I want a slightly more full-on version going onto here. Oh, yeah, okay, good. Can you tell I like that? That's a happy making one. Ice spruce is a really magical colour actually. Have I got it out in the Oxide as well? No, no I haven't. Let's see where these are now sitting. I think I do like the square one in the middle, and I think I'm going to live with this business because as I add more stamping, it's not going to stay to one's eye. Let's make a nice short one down here. Ice spruce. Yes, enjoying that. And then this is going to be old paper, but with quite a heavy dose of iced spruce going in this direction. I may use one of these sort of in the foreground as well. That way. Tall. Ooh, could go nice and tall. That would be good. Kind of coming on like with that. Yeah. Grand. Ooh. You know that thing when you're enjoying a thing a lot and then you don't want to overdo it. I think these are going to remain subtle. Whatever else happens, they're going to remain subtle. I hope. You never know. Suddenly something may take over and need to be. I think I want to put some iced sprucey bit up higher onto this one because I'm enjoying that going up there. So we'll just, ooh, well, we could do it with that bit. Look, there's a beautiful bit sticking out here. Let's ink that up and have that come in here. So I'm thinking, I don't know, windy days amongst the sand dunes. Look at that. I want more of that. So again, it's this business of look at what's happening. If it's giving you joy, why not repeat it? If it's making you happy, do it again. I'm going to put a little bit of this ice spruce down here. That's a good one. And then we need more on this side here. So I think we'll just bring the side of the stamp maybe most of the way up. Just layer it over the top of this one. That's all fine. In fact, if that one stays there, you can see that's kind of falling in the gap there. Can you see? Am I on camera? Let's do that. There we go. Enjoying those quite a lot. I hope you are too. Let's make sure you've been missing the bottoms, as it were. There we go. So that's the beautiful Lin Brown grassy stamp, and I think you can probably see why it's a favourite of mine. Just wondering about adding some sort of grassy crackle. I do love this crackle stamp. Question is in what colour, or will that detract from the sort of very subtle stencily patterns we've got going on? I think I might do some inking around the bottom here. I think that might be the thing to do. Maybe we'll start with a bit of pumice stone. Where's my little grey blending brush? So I'm just going to bring some colour onto here to create a few sand dunes. We might use a bit of antique linen. So because these are stamped in distress inks and did we do any distress oxide stamping yet? No, these are distress ink stampings, so they are going to move. You have to be gentle with them if you want to keep a sort of pristine look. You know me, I'm highly unlikely to want a pristine look, but look, you can see that on this watercolour surface is definitely being impacted by that sponging and blending, but that's fine. I'm very happy for my grasses to kind of soften in the wind. be a little bit even blurry, blowing in the wind. That's really fine by me at this stage. I don't know what's going to happen next, but for this stage, that's good. I do like the squares in the middle. I think I like the round shapes, or it's the big round one in the middle, because these two are sort of similar size patterning. So that's also quite nice. Yeah. I almost don't want to go on. I want to make sure things don't get messy. I think it might want a little bit of Distress Oxide Speckled Egg, because we love that. And what do I want to do with that? I think maybe I want to spatter it. Maybe I want to give it a little touch of additional spatter. Maybe I want to do some inking. It might be nice. Yeah, let's do that. So at the tops of these, not everything, the top of the tag didn't necessarily have patterning on, so just adding a bit extra in there, adding a bit extra where there isn't any. Ooh, that's nice. Do you see that little splat go down there over the inking? That is good. Let's have another of those over here. So again, looking, if the thing happens that you enjoy, why not do it again? You can always knock this back with paper towel if it becomes too much. And just because I can, I might pick up some of that inkiness direct onto the tag. Just mop up. Good. This one's quite a lot, so as I just said, I'm going to knock that back immediately. Knock that back, knock that back. So you're getting subtle layers just building up. Any minute now we're going to need to do something for the foreground. At the moment I'm still undecided as to whether it's going to be a bit more of the Lin Brown. I'm wondering about taking some Stormy Sky or Speckled Egg, just inking up the sides. Stormy Sky is nice. I said I was going to have this paper here so that I could test whether I wanted to do something. So just cleaning off that sponge a little bit, because I can't remember what I was using it with, but I want to make sure it's Stormy Sky for now. Yeah, I think that's going to be nice, maybe coming in around the sides. Just a little touch of the sky, maybe even a sort of hint of the sea in the distance might be a long-term thing. Let's have that going down there, and maybe a little bit sort of in there. That's quite enjoyable. Yeah, and the reason I like it down here is it's kind of giving me that possibility of the sea somewhere in the background here. This became very, very soft. I think it might even be moving the watercolour background, you know. But I'm fine. I mean, look, that's a blustery day at the beach. And any minute now I'm going to do some stamping in Archival, and that will stay. I'm wondering about this peat moss. That might be a good colour to stamp in. Let's experiment with it, as I promised we were going to. Over here, just to see if peat moss might be the colour. It's a beauty, and then I always forget about it. So I'm going to stamp it up, ink it up over here, stamp it on my spare bit of paper so that I can have a look at the colour tone, just to see if that's the thing I want in my foreground. Stamp it down. Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. Okay, here we go. Question being, is it going to be this on all three? Is it going to be this on just one of them? There's a very clear position for it to go here, which is just off center, right there. Good stamping. And this one should have more clarity than those soft backgrounds. Love it. Absolutely love it. I love this stamp. It's magical. Might not even use any of mine today. Let's see where we go. Irritatingly, this one is already sort of in the right place, so I might just intensify that. Why not? Again, you can see there's a sort of opening in there, so maybe if I aim to get some grass, no, I want it a little further up, And really this one does need to lean that way. It doesn't want to be the same height as this. Does it want to go higher? And then I can fill in at the bottom. Yes, let's do that. Higher, but slightly further over to the side. So this is, we're very much in repetition and variation mode today, as you can see. My mode of creativity where the same imagery repeats, but in a slightly different position, sometimes in a slightly different colour. So that's just building depth in there for that one. Gives it a different look from this one. And I think I do want to do it on all three. It's going to end up being in quite a similar position to this one, but maybe if I lean it in the other direction, that'll give us our variation. So here's the repetition of the stamping, but the variation is going to be that it goes like so, or it goes steeply like so, or it goes at a different height, somewhere in between those two. So that one's quite tall, that one's part way down. I'm going to try and aim for somewhere in between those two things and with a good tilt on it. I just love them. Right, having got that extra bit of sort of depth of colour, I'm quite keen to add a bit more depth of colour around the bottom here. And because the blending is causing sort of these to soften a bit too much, I mean, I could always restamp. Of course I could. Maybe that's what I should do. Just wondering what colour. And it'd be quite nice to be able to put this on. Let's see how it responds to being blended. I mean, yeah, again, there's so much green on this. That looks like some mowed lawn to me. I'm going to try and get that off so that I can come with peat moss. There we go. That's a bit softer. Let's just have a little touch of peat moss into the mix down here. Just to give the bottom of the tag a bit more weight, a bit more heft, a bit more grounding. So that by contrast, the top of the tag becomes airier and lighter. So it's in those builds of the layers that you start to create the light and the dark, the contrast, the changing. Quite keen on that, to maybe do a little bit more spatter. And I think it might be Stormy Sky again. Or we could go with something a little greener down here. Maybe it's old paper, because that is there in the background. That's, oh, hang on, that's not old paper, that's iced spruce. Now I've got loads of iced spruce on them. Have I got something I can pick it up onto? Yeah, let's just pop it onto this bit of chopped off card. Been using bits of card in specific sizes. Oh, look at that, just doing a little bit of inky magic. We'll leave that over there. Maybe we could spatter with a little bit of this. It's going to make things quite dark unless I add quite a lot of water. There we go. Yeah, that's good. Around the bottoms there. And then, of course, what we could also treat this as is spritz and flick. If I pick it up with paper towel, what it'll create is little spots of light rather than little spots of dark. But I'm quite enjoying that build. Grand. So it's going to be time to just pause and take a little look. See what else might need to happen. I'm going to knock that back a little bit. So the blending is happening differently on this watercolour paper than one is used to having it happen. I think it might be time to spat a little bit of Periwinkle, this Periwinkle watercolour paint. So these are the American Journey paints. For all the details of this, do take a look at the video I link down below, because that's got all this in it. There it is. There's a magic in that. Don't like the size of that blob just there. Don't like the size of that blob just there. Don't like the size of that blob just there. so I'll lose them. Simple little pickup. So this is returning to some of the colours that are in those very subtle backgrounds, and it's just giving us that echo of the background colours, and it's got a delicious difference from the distress inks that we've been using and the archival inks, because it's its own colour. I think that might almost be enough, you know. Wondering about words. Obviously my brain has moved over to words and is thinking, what's it going to be? What would we like in here? I think what we might like is just a single large word at the bottoms of each of these, the question being which. Dreaming. Well, I think it might be these three. Dreaming, Wilderness and Peace from EAB41. I'm just going to dry these so they're fully dry, because that will give me the option of embossing those words if I feel that they need a bit more presence. So let me dry these and I'll be back in a sec. Right, good and dry, so hopefully any embossing powder I use will stick only to what I'm stamping and nothing else. I'm debating at the moment whether I've made it dark enough down here to be able to emboss in something like this lovely vanilla white. I think I don't want to go bright white, because this paper is definitely a sort of off white. I just need to have a look which word is going to go where. There's peace, there's dreaming, there's wilderness. So there's lots of space here, so that's probably wilderness. That's probably peace, and that's probably dreaming. Yeah, let's do it. You don't know until you try. And I'm going to stamp probably in an Oxide ink, because I actually want it quite juicy. I want it to hold plenty of powder, because I'm going to need it to be quite present. So I think I might let's stamp in a nice pale Oxide. Maybe the Pumice stone. That's a sort of barely there kind of colour. Not that it matters, because this is opaque embossing powder, but just to be on the safe side. And who knows, I may love the Pumice stone as it goes down. So trying to remember to line up my word with the line on the grid block, because that's the thing that should enable me to stamp it in a straight line so often. And also these squares are not quite true. They're not quite square. Ooh, I'm looking at this now, and I mean, I love it. Absolutely love it in the Pumice stone. But I'm wondering whether white is an error. Maybe we do just want grey tones down here. White might detract too much from what's going on up there. Need to think. I could stamp in this. I don't think that's going to show up, so that would need embossing in something like a clear. Or in my much loved, where is it? Earthtone pepper. Ooh, it could be earthtone pepper. It's quite strong. But again, because I like that sense of rooting these and then having the airiness, that maybe a strong word is the way to go. Okay, let's re-ink. So this is still the Pumice stone Oxide. I mean, look how beautiful that is. It really is lovely. But as I say, I don't think it's going to be quite opaque enough to read down here. So I'm on standby with powder and paper. Straight line-ish, at least. There it is. No, it doesn't quite show, and I do want it dark, not light. Do I? Can't spend too long thinking about it. Dark it is. Oh, yes. It was the right decision. Phew. Sometimes you don't know until it happens. Good. Let's ink up Peace. Again, lining it up on the grid block so that I can hopefully get a nice straight line stamping. This worked pretty well to grab powder, so I'm going to stick with it. And it also gives me that lovely moment of enjoying the subtlety of the Pumice stone stamping down here. You get out of the way. Right to the corner, slightly to the middle, no, to the corner. That really doesn't look straight in any way, shape or form. So having said I was using the grid line to make it straight, I didn't trust it in the slightest when it came to it. Let's try that again. Ink it up. Maybe the bottom of the tag isn't straight. Maybe I should ignore the bottom of the tag and just go with this vertical line lined up with the side of the tag. It's always possible that my cutting is completely not straight. More than possible. And for the most part, I'm fine with that, as you know, embracing that imperfection. Let's pop Dreaming down here. These Oxide inks, absolutely fine to leave on the stamp. They're not going to do any harm. They're water reactive, so I can clean them off at any point when I'm ready to clean them off. It's only if you're stamping in paint that you need to get in there right away and deal with it. Good. Again, I'm going to go with that upright and hope that the upright is... No, I don't believe it. Straight enough. Good stuff. Phew. So I'm going to emboss these with my heat tool, and I'll be right back. Going to give that a little tap just to get rid of any extraneous stuff, and that little tap. Grand. Time for the heat tool. So I will be with you shortly. Safely heat embossed, and hopefully you can catch the little glimmer of that as it goes. So it goes on dark and comes up a little bit lighter. I'm enjoying that quite a lot. What I'm wondering at the moment is whether I want to mount these maybe on just a little bit of, yes, see, that's going to be rather nice, isn't it? It'll also give them a little bit more sturdiness. It'll mean that they stay flat more easily. And then I'm just thinking it might be some simple twine around, maybe a little tiny metal embellishment. Just wondering. But what I can do is, do I get 3 out of 1 sheet of paper? Ooh, I do. I do. Excellent. And because I've smudged this one's going to go there rather than, you know, usually I would go to the corner and save myself some cutting. But because I've made a mess of this piece of watercolour paper in the past, that's not going to work. Grand. So I will use my usual Cosmic Shimmer just to glue these down. You can absolutely use a softer decoupage glue or the Tim Holtz collage medium or any glue really, whatever you've got. I quite like this because I'm used to using it and it does the job nicely. So rather than inking, because the inking is getting me is compromising the backgrounds, I'm going to frame using mounting. So quite often I would use inking around the edges to create a framing effect, but for this it's going to be this. Grand. I'm going to glue the others of these down, trim around them, and then we'll see if there are finishing touches that are needed. There's something about the almost monastic simplicity of these that is making me very happy today. I don't know whether it's to do with the summer light and lightness, a counter to the darkness in the world at the moment, but there's something making me very happy with exactly how they are. I'm in two minds at the moment about whether it should be white twine or natural twine, and just as I'm looking at it, I'm sort of a little bit wanting, where's my peat moss gone and where's my stamp gone, wanting just a little bit of extra grassiness down here, and maybe let's have a look. I'm not going to do it with a full-on, she says it's going to be easier to control if I've got it on the grid block. I just want something here, and it might be as simple as adding that little bit as though it's part of this same grass. So I'm just going to ink up this little strand, and because I don't really want it on this white edge here, let's make sure it's not going to. Okay, in case it does, I'm going to use this bit of card that we mopped up with just to seal off that framing so that I can have grass on the main bit of the tag but not on my frame. I think that's made me happier, because it's It's about waiting, and I think I do want a little something down here. So let's look again. Which bit do we sort of want? I think a little bit of that might do it here, which means I'm going to need to shield 2 bits. So let's put that up there. Let's put that along there. Oh, maybe it'd be easier with a thicker bit to stay put. Grand. So again, I'm just masking so that those bits don't get caught up in what I'm playing with here. What did I decide? I think it's that, but I don't want this curvy bit inked up, so it's this side. That's getting those, and then sort of one each side of the stem here. What was it? That one. Again, just to make it look as though that grassy stem is continuing on down off here. Good. I want. Could that bit go there? That could work, couldn't it? Okay, let's mask again. Let's make sure we haven't got any ink going on in places where we don't want it for this stamping. And we're going to try and add that little bit of branch just in there. Okay, so it's you. So if your stamp isn't the shape you want, or you've stamped it in a place you don't really want it, or it's not quite doing what you'd like it to do, you can see that you can add extra. Just going to put that in there. Just don't want to quite hit the word. Yeah, it just needed a bit more body. And I think I am leaning towards the white twine. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to do just the teensiest splat of white paint. Teensiest bit of gentle summer splatter, knocking off the excess so that we don't get too much going on. There's just something about that lightens up those dark corners. I think that might be what this is about. And where it's gone over the embossed word, I'll be able to just pick that up with paper towel because the embossing powder will resist it. So you can see how subtle that is. Well, you may not be able to see at all. It's very subtle. When I dive in for the close-up, you'll see what that white paint is doing. It's just giving us those little motes of light dancing in the sunlight. It might be sparkling echoes of light dancing off the sand in the sand dunes. It might be little bits of pollen coming off the grasses. It might just be the sun's rays catching light in misty droplets of water splashing off the sea. But that's I think all that these tags need. Oh, white twine. So I will add white twine to them, then dive in for the close-up. So let's just, if you take a look at this, I'm just going to knock back the paint off the word, and because that word is glossily embossed, as long as you get the paint while it's still wet, it's a little trickier to achieve, although it is still possible. It's a little trickier to achieve if you let the paint dry on there. There we go. Grand. White twine, and then I'll be back for some close-ups. Thank you so much for your company as always today. I hope you've enjoyed that little bit of beachy playtime with those backgrounds created before. Check the description below for details of what we've used today, as well as links to relevant videos. And if you've enjoyed today's episode, do leave me a thumbs up. Any comments or questions, always delighted to hear from you. And happy crafting all.